All right, happy Friday, everybody. You know what that means. More Sweet 16 action, 4 more games on the college basketball slate. And I and Matt Gajewski are here to break it all down. Not going to lie, I like to tell the people what's going on. Last night went as bad as it could go for me. I was rooting for all 4 teams that lost. So, Mr. Gajewski, I need a better showing. How did your night go last night? We saw 2 number 1 seeds go down.
It was pretty good overall. Had the over in the Michigan Villanova game, so that didn't hit. But then backing Houston slightly, I will add. I did not have a lot of conviction in that game, but I tend to lean the Houston direction. And then bet Duke, which was probably the best call I had. DFS was a little bit of a mixed bag, some chalk bust, some chalk hit. So you had to be on the correct pieces overall. Didn't take anything down, but hopefully going to get it back tonight.
That's right. Yeah, I should have bet Duke. I ended up staying away there, walked right into the Arizona trap, and I was rooting for Gonzaga, who caught a bad whistle, and they played absolutely terrible. But we pick up the pieces. A lot more opportunities tonight, and one of the best opportunities is over at PrizePicks. That has been a beacon of hope because those props with your projections, we can quickly and easily uncover edges. If you haven't been over there, prizepicks.com, what you're doing, you're choosing 2, 3, 4, 5 picks against the props line. So whether it's points, assists, rebounds, fantasy score, 3-pointers, so many different categories, and you're just projecting, will they go over or under the line that is set? And if you are new and you sign up, use that promo code Awesemo, you're going to get that deposit bonus of up to $100. No reason not to check that out, Matt. We're talking about some of the rebounding props yesterday. The general question I wanted to ask you, and we'll get into it all, we have like a team like St. Peter's on the slate tonight. So there's some guys there. Do you think there's more edges in these guys that aren't normally on a site like PrizePicks, or do you just treat it, person by person?
I think there can be. PrizePicks actually done a pretty good job of pricing some of these players. I think St. Peter's is a little tricky to price altogether because they run like a 10-man rotation and the minutes aren't consistent. So there's potential edges there. With St. Peter's, that's a team that's been running so hot in terms of their shot quality. They're outside the top 200 in shot quality. No other team is outside the top 60. Both of their games this tournament have been losses in terms of shot quality. They had a 98% chance of losing the Kentucky game based on the shots taken on the floor, and somehow that 2% outcome occurred. So this is a team that's extremely volatile. And to me, I would rather back some more consistent situations on PrizePicks. So to me, it's more the tried and true guys. And I do think there are a couple mispricings. There's one in particular on PrizePicks that stands out more than any other. It's Johnny Juzang's points. It's at 14.5. And there's a couple reasons for this. First of all, I don't believe he's correctly projected on PrizePicks. This is a guy that's been injured multiple times this year. So if you're using any sort of season averages, they're depressed. Now, back on our projections, which I think are a little more accurate in terms of the role he's going to play. He's around 17 points. The PrizePicks prop is at 14.5. And I do think there's even more outs towards the over. Jaime Jacquez is dealing with an injury here, and he's expected to play, but at what capacity, we don't know. So there may be even more available shots for Juzang, who is their primary shooter, not to mention North Carolina outside the top 200 in 3-point defense. We'll get to all that later, but he's just one that really stood out.
Yeah, and even the pace in that game should be good. I'm with you, and we'll see what, like you said, Jaime Jacquez is going to play. I think that's pretty clear, but in what capacity remains to be determined. So we're going to find those edges. All right, let's dive in. We've got 4 games. The first one, and like I said, I was rooting against every winner last night. If I lose Purdue tonight, I give up. I'm not going to bet this because it's 13 points, but I am certainly rooting for the Boilermakers. All right, so what exactly is St. Peter's going to do against guys like Zach Edey and against Travion? And because they have no height, does that make those guys playable? Or is it the age-old question that they're both around 20 or so minutes because they can't be on the floor together?
Purdue has really struggled in pick and roll. Edey is a player who's very bad in space. So I think you want to get him away from the basket if possible. That's the only way St. Peter's stays competitive in this game. And it's really hard for me to see them winning it altogether. Or I don't want to lay the 13 with Purdue, but even covering the spread, I think, is a stretch for St. Peter's here. They just take so many bad shots. And Purdue's a solid team, especially with their height. Like, they're not going to get a lot of these points around the basket if they try to. So unless they just go crazy with shooting over expectation. I don't really see it for them. But at the same time, are you going to lay 13 points with Purdue? It's a little difficult for me. So I think I'm just off in the betting markets. It took Purdue at plus 120 to come out of this region. So I think that's just where I'll sit. For DFS, I mean, St. Peter's has the lowest implied team total on the board, but there's no value on the slate. So right away, we're kind of coaxed into playing one, maybe two of these St. Peter's guys because they're so cheap. We mentioned they're going to play maybe 10 guys out tonight, which is kind of what they've been doing all tournament. So players like Fosenyi Drame, Hassan Drame, they're very cheap, below 4.5K. They're going to see mid 20s to maybe 30 minutes. Both of them are going to be banging against Trevion and Edey in the front court, which isn't ideal. So if you're trying to avoid that matchup, maybe you could play Doug Eater or Matthew Lee. They both are going to get upper to mid 20s again in minutes. Usage is really spread for St. Peter's. Nobody's above a 16.8% usage rate. Very difficult to feel confident about anybody, but I think without any value anywhere else, we're going to have to play one.
Yeah, ironically, the one thing I knew about St. Peter's going into the tournament is they have very strong defense, but they've just been running so hot with some of their, the regression on their shots in terms of makes is going to come with their quality. It's not great, and I think it comes here. What about Ivy? What do you do with him? 8,200.
On the Purdue side, I think he's a pretty easy play if you're looking for a pay-up option. Again, slate is really tight, so you're not going to be able to play 3-4 studs. You're going to get one or two. And Ivy, I think, does make a lot of sense. When games are competitive, he plays every minute, 38, 28, and 34 minutes in the last three. And that 28-minute came against just a helpless Yale team. So Ivy's got a great floor. He has a phenomenal usage rate. It's up near 21%. He's involved in every statistical category. He can create shots on his own. So he's a solid play. Trevion and Edey are always GPP options. Both of them are likely to get double doubles if they see more than 20 minutes. It's just flipping a coin who's going to be the player that does. In the most recent game, it was Trevion Williams. And what I like about Trevion is he has so much upside in the periphery too. He has a great assist rate, phenomenal passer. It's just 24 minutes, maybe his ceiling, unless Edey fouls out really early. So tough to get to these guys. And previously in the tournament, in the conference tournament, we were playing Sasha Stefanovic. We were playing Eric Hunter occasionally for value, but now both are above 5K. So it kind of prices them out of the range where I want to target them as fourth and fifth options on this team.
Yeah, Travion's PrizePicks rebounding prop is 7. Kind of like that. I do think that they may be prone to close with him down the stretch. They did. You mentioned he was phenomenal against Texas. I don't know exactly if Edey's going to get in foul trouble, but you never know. Anything else from this first game?
I don't think so. The total's low. Purdue has a high team total. It's actually second highest on the board. But still, their rotation being as wide as it is, I still think this is a spot where you're probably playing one guy on Purdue max, maybe two on St. Peter's. I'm definitely not trying to play more than two.
Not stackable.
Probably not. Unless you're just like
YOLO.
Ethan Morton might see 20 minutes. He's 3.4K. Doesn't do anything. Mason Gillis might see 20 minutes. He's 4.7. He just doesn't do anything. So those are guys that you have to debate. Would you rather play a Mason Gillis, who's a win sprinter on a team that has a high implied team total, or would you rather play somebody on St. Peter's who has better usage, but just a really low ceiling? And I haven't quite decided yet, but those are the debates you'll have with this team.
Providence and Kansas matchup, we were kind of expected to get. In fact, we did get it. Iowa was not able to do anything and never even got to Providence. Kansas survived Creighton, which to me was a little disappointing. 7.5 point spread here, 141.5. Let's start with Providence. So I don't think they're particularly good, but they have destroyed two teams. I think they've run pretty hot. What do you see here with Horschler and Durham and Watson? They've got a lot of guys. Does one stand out as the guy to target, or is this just mix and match style?
Yeah, for Providence as a team, they should have lost in round one. They had the inferior shot quality to South Dakota State. South Dakota State actually wins that game 77% of the time based on the shots taken on the floor. So Providence continues to run hot. They have all season long. I'm going to continue to try to short them, but laying 7.5 with Kansas against a shorthanded after they laying that against Providence here after they just laid an egg against a shorthanded Creighton is kind of difficult to do. If anything, I like the total in this game. I think it should be a little higher. Kansas plays at a pretty decent pace. It's just Providence has really slowed things down lately, but Ken Baum has that at 145. If you're looking for betting, that's where I would lean. in DFS, Providence is a difficult team to target. They run an 8-man rotation and they're dealing with injuries. So Al Durham is still dealing with the hernia. He's going to have that surgically repaired after the season. And you can see in games where they slaughter opponents, they take him out pretty quickly. He only played 24 minutes in the last game. I think that's just to preserve him for more competitive games down the stretch. And it's kind of the same with AJ Reeves. He's a guy that had been battling injury coming into the tournament, just 24 minutes in their last game. Again, I think more time to rest is going to benefit these players. And if games are competitive, they're going to play close to every minute. Durham in particular, Reeves is still more of a rotational guy. But Reeves is below 5K. If you want to take a stab on a guy who's mainly a peripheral player, good assist rate, I think you can. Again, there's no value, so Reeves doesn't really stand out any more or less than the St. Peter's guys or any more or less than the value on Purdue. So Reeves, I think, is fine. And then outside of that, I think you're probably just paying up for Durham, assuming he gets back to that 38-minute ceiling he was playing in the conference tournaments, or playing Horschler, who has phenomenal rates lately. He is the best chance at a double-double here. Just Kansas is fairly strong inside when they use Dave McCormick and Jalen Wilson. So he's going to be going up into a pretty decent, difficult matchup for him.
Yeah, the one thing I'd point out about Providence is that they do want to play really slow, and they've been able to do that because in both games, they pretty much throughout, particularly against Richmond, they controlled and they were able to allocate the minutes properly. I want to see what happens here if they're losing, if Kansas is dictating. How big of a bump to the minutes to a guy like Durham would we see? How big of a pace bump would we particularly see with Providence if they're not able, if they're not up 20 points? And I don't really see many scenarios where they are dictating throughout. I think they can hang in the game, no doubt, but I think their stats will be a little different than what we've seen in the first two. I just don't know exactly what to do with some of the peripheral guys. I think you kind of summed it up. On PrizePicks, you just have a lot of guys between, even on the points for them. You've got 6 players for Providence with PrizePicks points at 7.5 to 12.5. It just shows kind of that balanced nature of the team.
Yeah, I agree. I don't really think there's too much edge to be had here unless Durham plays more minutes than we're expecting. I haven't projected at 31, but this is a player with a wide range of outcomes. He could play 38 minutes today if the game is competitive. So Durham, because of the injury, I think is the most volatile, but I think there's the most potential edge to exploit here. Whether that's on PrizePicks or DFS, I think it's viable in both.
Yeah, he hasn't cracked 30 minutes in either game. And it's not because, in my opinion, it's not because he can. It's because they didn't really need him to do that, particularly against Richmond. On the other side, is Braun wildly overpriced? I'm just looking at this right now. Obaji, Braun, Wilson, McCormick, Remy Martin. What do we do with the Jayhawks?
Agbaji and Braun have been overpriced the entire season.
And
they have pretty solid usage, but they just don't have the same upside as some other studs. And that is the case on this slate again. Like Agbaji, he's going to play close every minute, but he's really shot dependent. He has this enormous ceiling, but a floor that's lower than some other studs in the slate. He's not really live for a double-double ever, so you don't get that bonus with him. So unless he hits his shots, and I mean, he hits a lot of them, but at 8.1K, I think I'd rather play someone on North Carolina, and we'll get to them. Braun is the same thing for, kind of like a wing combo forward type player. He's consistent across the board, but none of his rates are above 17%, 17.5% shot rate, 17% rebound rate, 17% assist rate. Like, that's fine. It's just consistent, but I really don't see a ceiling with him at his price. Jalen Wilson, I think, has the highest double-double upside, more so than Big Dave McCormick, just because the minutes are a lot more consistent. Dave McCormick has played like single-digit minutes in their last 5 games, whereas Jalen Wilson in competitive spots, he's up above 30 consistently, 32, 20, and 35 in their last 3 games, with that 20-minute game occurring in just a cupcake first-round matchup, 27-point victory, so don't make much of that. Honestly, the best price-adjusted play is probably Remy Martin still. We continue to see him rev up during the tournament, played 29 minutes in their last game, and I think that only increases down the stretch as they get closer to their ultimate goal, which would be a championship here. And Kansas is now the favorite to win it all, based on just betting on seeing Arizona and Gonzaga get removed from the tournament yesterday. So I think we see Remy continue to play more and more in the last 3 games. He has phenomenal rates, and he's still not expensive enough if he plays 30-plus minutes.
Yeah, Remy Martin with 14 shots against Creighton. That to me was a true stunner, more of a distributor at times, but He's looked good. You've mentioned he's revving up. Do you think there's scenarios here where he pushes for, 30 plus minutes?
Yeah, another week of rest. He's gone from 26 and then non-competitive first round game 21 to 29. He's been getting close to 30 in a couple games now, and they still have won every game by at least 7 points. So I think in a very tightly contested game, he's going to hit over 30. Not sure if Providence pushes that, but even if Remy's 25 to 30 here, he's still fine for his price tag.
Are you looking to put him into cash?
I think he's cash viable.
Okay. Anything else? It looks like, below him, it kind of goes off a cliff. I don't, unless I'm missing something. Do you see yourself getting to any cheap Jayhawks?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. No, Mitch Lightfoot for you. Sad.
No.
What can you do? If you are hopping in for the first time, you're checking us out, you want more college basketball? Well, OddsChecker YouTube, we've got all the betting content over there. Certainly, we're going to have shows each and every day of the tournament here. If you want to support us, easiest way to do that, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, 75,000 subscribers and growing quickly. And of course, if you want to get in our Discord, get our premium bets, Matt, myself, mercifully, but Alex and Steve, they do a great job. NBA getting those edges. Click in the link of the description. You sign it up for a week. You try us out. I know you'll have a good time, in addition to hopefully making some money, but great community there as well. All right, 2 down, 2 to go. Those were the early games. Now we go to the night games, the real late night games. UNC, UCLA, just a couple point spread. UCLA is favorite, 141.5 point total. UNC survived probably the craziest game of the tournament, in my opinion. I don't have enough time to recap that. They are here. Manic is back. I do think in a crazy way, and I think you and me have talked about this, it was pretty good for North Carolina to get some guys into the game in serious minutes. They didn't want to, but they had to, particularly Dontrez Styles, who was absolutely fantastic. But I assume that he will be relegated pending more foul trouble to his not huge role here. Or do you think he's cracked the rotation for good?
No, I think they go right back to their studs pending foul trouble again. So the reason he played a lot is because Manic got ejected. And I think if it were RJ Davis or Caleb Love that were in foul trouble or ejected, you would have seen Puff Johnson play more. Those are guys I think that they can use in a pinch, but they would rather just play their tight rotation. And North Carolina plays super fast too, which is the crazy part about this. They're at nearly 73 possessions per game. So they're sprinting up and down the floor, not rotating at all, just getting these studs on the floor the entire time. For betting purposes, I think both teams have advantages. The line has moved a lot in North Carolina's direction. I think mainly just because of the Jacquez injury on UCLA. I think it's a good time to buy low on UCLA. North Carolina is coming on very strong. They've been the 3rd team overall in Bart Torvik metrics since the month of February, which is great. They also have a drastic advantage in size. North Carolina's 8th in rebounding. They have a huge advantage in effective height. UCLA plays a lot of the time without a premier big man, and Jacquez kind of functions in that role, and him being injured does hurt them. Meanwhile, UCLA is a team that just shoots the ball a ton, and they're inside the top 100 in 3-point percentage. With Juzang healthier, that should even climb higher. And North Carolina is outside the top 200 in perimeter defense. So it's a solid matchup offensively for both sides of this. In DFS, on the North Carolina side, we definitely want to target at least 4 of their 5 starters. Leaky Black is kind of just a wind sprinter. But between Caleb Love, RJ Davis, Brady Manic, Armando Bacot, these players are all going to see the floor for nearly 40 minutes. Bacot is a walking double-double. He averages 1 on the season. He's somebody you definitely can't go wrong with. The only thing is the slate is super tight in terms of pricing. So Bacot, he might just be a casualty because of the way the salary works out. But I'm trying to find a way to get to him. If you can't, fine with Manic. He's so active in every single statistical category. I do like Caleb Love a lot as a buy low. He has way better usage than RJ Davis on the year. We just saw the explosion from RJ in their most recent game. So I think you might be able to get some leverage going right back to Caleb Love after the big RJ Davis game.
Yeah, Brady Manic he had a big game, but he was en route to having just a colossal game against Baylor before he was ejected. He had 26 points already. Bacot, you mentioned walking double-double. Rebounding prop is at 12.5, just to give you an idea of what we're looking at. And I think it's probably warranted, to be honest.
I think it's probably too low.
Yeah, you mentioned UCLA is not an imposing front court by any stretch. No Leaky Black. Styles, Do you think people will go to him? I know you're not advocating, but do you think people will see the box score and think that maybe there's something there sub 4K?
Some people might. It's just value so thin. I don't think it's a strong play, but he did play well when he's out there. There's a chance he may have earned more minutes, but I think max 20, unless there's fouls.
On the other side, let's start with Jaime Jacquez. Do you think he's a good tournament play because he's sporting the Q tag, or do you think it's just too much risk with not enough reward?
I think you could play him. His rates are amazing. He's above 22.5% in all three major categories: shot rate, rebound rate, and assist rate. It's not like the ankle injury is new. He's had this all year. He just aggravated it. So again, he played 37 minutes in back-to-back games before the 30-minute outing in their most recent contest where he sustained the injury. There's a huge ceiling with Jacquez, and it's all health dependent. I think you could buy low on him. It's just, are you going to play Jacquez or take like Brady Manick, who's going to give you 38 minutes consistently? In cash games, low risk contests, it's Manick for me, but in bigger tournaments, Jacquez I think is viable, assuming he plays at full health, but we just don't know that.
Johnny Juzang, you've already talked about his PrizePicks points prop maybe being a little light at 14.5. 6,300, is that an appealing price tag on DraftKings?
Yeah, it is for sure. He plays every single minute when he's healthy, and his price is down because of injury. He had the accident on the scooter, hurt his hip. He's back now. In their last three games, he's played 39, 29, and 38 minutes. The 29-minute game was against Akron. In competitive games, he's going to play every single minute. He plays a lot like Agbaji as a shooter, and he's a player that at one point or another this season, he was around 8K in pricing, and now you're getting him at 6.3K. He's the best offensive weapon on this team. He has a 20% rebound rate in their last three games. I think part of that because of the Jacquez injury, and he's active in the periphery with assisting as well. So Johnny Juzang is the best play on the slate in terms of price adjusted projection. I think he's just an easy player to get to here.
And so that would, to me, clearly make him cash viable.
Yeah, he's the best play in cash. Like everything lines up. He has a great implied team total. He has the best usage on the team. The minutes are consistent, and he exploits a weakness for North Carolina's defense.
Tiger Campbell, Bernard, indifferent, no, maybe. What do you do with these guys?
If you're only playing one UCLA guy, I'm just going up to Juzang. If you're playing two, and I think you can because they have a good team total, I think you can play Tiger. He has the best assist rate. Jules does a little bit of everything. He's active in every statistical category. So I honestly, I'm comfortable playing either of those guys. I would probably just save the 200 and get to Campbell. But if it doesn't matter, it doesn't matter. You can play either one.
Do you expect Cody Riley to be tasked with Baycott, or is there another big they're going to throw at him?
That's a good question. I'm actually glad you brought him up. I almost glossed over him. He played a lot of minutes with Jacquez going down in their last game. But I think Cody Riley could be forced to play more minutes altogether just because of Baycott inside. He's a player that does have a ton of foul risk. He's, one of these like Julius Marble type bigs where he could foul out in 10 minutes. But if he doesn't, he might play 27, 28, 29 minutes for this team. And he's 4.5K. He doesn't really shoot a lot, but he has a lot of rebound upside. So Cody Riley, I think, is playable as a value piece just because of the lack of alternatives.
Yeah, it's a huge risk reward because the reason I think he's going to be on the floor a lot is because he draws just a brutal matchup with Baycott. But if he stays on the floor, he probably falls into 6, 7, 8 rebounds just by being out there, in my opinion. So 45, pretty appealing tag. Just don't be surprised if he's sitting on the bench when he picks up 2 quick ones, because that's definitely in the range of outcomes. I think. Would you agree?
Yeah, and the tough thing is if that occurs, they kind of replace him by committee. It's Miles Johnson, it's Peyton Watson, and there's a couple of guys they use. So it's not like you could play the direct backup in case he falls out. They just don't really play a guy like that.
Mm-hmm. Last game, 2 teams that for the most part, I don't think people expected them to be there. Iowa State, clearly not for me. Miami, honestly, equally as shocking just because they destroyed Auburn. But here we are at the Canes are sitting as a 2.5-point favorite. I did bet Miami earlier in the week. I got 1.5. Pretty comfortable with it, but you know how these games go. But let's start with Iowa State. They've been forcing turnovers all year, and they even turned over Wisconsin. Now, how much that was Chucky Hepburn and how much is that is Iowa State's defense remains to be seen. But you've got Brockington, you've got Hunter, then you have a massive drop-off. So how do you break down a team like this?
Yeah, Iowa State, they're going to live and die by their turnovers. Luckily, Miami doesn't turn the ball over really at all. They're top 10 in the country in turnovers. So that's fantastic to see for them. They should be able to handle the pressure of Iowa State with their veteran guard play and Moore, Wong, McGusty. That suits Miami. And then you have an Iowa State team that fouls a ton because of their aggressiveness. They're 55th in the country in fouls committed. Meanwhile, Miami is top 75 in fouls generated. So that's going to be a huge edge here too. As far as shooting, like if this comes down to a close game at the end, Iowa State is horrific shooting. They're outside the top 225 in field goal percentage, outside the top 290 in free throw percentage. Miami is in the top 25 for effective field goal percentage and 84th in free throws. So a lot of advantages there. And then teams that beat Miami can do so with size. We saw Miami come up with a really creative game plan to stop Auburn, putting Walker Kessler in space, getting him in foul trouble. Luckily, they don't even have to take that approach against Iowa State. They don't play very big. They're actually a little lower in terms of effective height. Rebounding is about the same for both these teams. So I like Miami a ton of the betting markets. I got it at -2, a little worse than you, but hopefully you and I can feed our families with some of this closing line value tonight.
Yeah, believe me, after walking into the Arizona trap, could really use the bounce back. Are any of these cheapy Cyclones potentially cash viable for you?
Gabe Kalsher, he plays consistent minutes, but man, he is a roller coaster. He's their shooting guard, so he is going to take a ton of shots. And if he hits them, you're going to be very happy at the end of the day. If he doesn't, he's probably going to leave you with 10 to 15 fantasy points at 4.8K, which is on this slate, it might actually be okay because of the studs it affords you. But man, it is not going to look pretty in your lineup. I think he's the value play you try to get to. Outside of him, Brockington is always somebody you can play. The usage rate is huge, but he's another guy that just lives and dies by the shot rate. He's like a poor man's Agbaji for this Iowa State team. Doesn't really do a lot in the periphery. I think these guys are dicey GPP plays on a team that has a 65-point implied team total.
On the other side, Miami doesn't turn the ball over. They've been fantastic all year, and they've been even, ridiculous in the tournament. Just a couple of turnovers in each game. They do have a lot of ball handlers. That's partly why you've got McGusty, you've got Moore, Wong, like just not a ton of size. So do you think that will gel well here? And who do you think maybe is the guy for Miami tonight?
They're kind of like North Carolina light, where they play 5 guys and that's it. And they're all much cheaper. And the team total isn't significantly different. Miami at 68, that implied team total is just 3 less than North Carolina. So I do think you want at least one player. McGusty projects the best. He plays every single minute. He's active in every statistical category, highlighted by that 29% shot rate. Jordan Miller, he's going to give you the most double-double equity. He has the highest rebound rate on the team. Shot rate leaves a little bit to be desired, but it's still above it's above 17% in their last 3 games. Charlie Moore, he's mainly a peripheral guy, 41% assist rate last 3, but you're not getting as much shots and rebounds wise. And Wong is pretty cheap, 22% shot rate, 14% rebound rate for Wong. He'll play 35 minutes here without foul trouble as well. Wardenberg, he does exploit the size. I guess I should say the lack of size Iowa State has. He's their biggest player on the court, and he's played 35, 34, 35 minutes in 3 straight. He just hasn't done a lot on the floor. So I think if you can't find any salary to get up to like Wong, I'm okay with Wardenberg, but I would try to make that jump if you can.
Yeah, the fact that he survived with only 1 foul against Auburn's bigs, this should be a lot easier for him. I assume you already mentioned this ridiculously tight rotation. You're not Anthony Walker and these other guys that I don't even know. Wooga Poplar. That is a name, my man. But
he's a young kid.
Yeah, I assume these guys are just not playable.
No.
Anything in terms of do you think you're going to have lineups where you take a couple of Miami players together, or is it the team that screams maybe one guy in some lineups?
Yeah, Miami really stands out on this slate. Miami and UCLA are kind of both in this price range. Again, you can't play like Jaden Ivey, Baycott, and like another 8K stud. You just don't have the value for it. So you find yourself in this 6K to 7K range quite a bit. And where the best plays in this range, it's Miami with their tight rotation and UCLA with their tight rotation. And maybe a Caleb Love, who's kind of on the upper end of it. But that's where a lot of lineups tonight for me are going to focus, trying to get like one of the premier studs and then trying to hit a lot of these mid-price Miami and UCLA guys.
Any final thoughts on the 4-game slate tonight? Again, we will have you covered from every angle, the projections, the tools, the betting stuff on OddsChecker. It is all here. Any final thoughts, though, before we bounce on out?
yeah, I think focus on the tight rotations. Again, it's a tight slate for pricing. So 1 or 2 value plays, hopefully you hit the right ones, and then focus on the guys you know are getting the minutes.
There it is. Any questions at Matt_Gajewski at JazzRaz DFS? Hit us in the comments. What are you doing? Who's going to get knocked off tonight? We want to know these hot takes so we can repackage them as our own in future shows. We love the enthusiasm. We love the community. But for me, for Matt, for Mike behind the glass, good luck tonight. Enjoy the rest of the Sweet 16, and you will see us again tomorrow breaking down all things Elite 8. We'll see you guys then.